Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be an amazing episode. I'm so excited. As you know, in my house, we love the red, the white, and the blue. We bleed blue, and we bleed red in our house. We support all firefighters, police officers. So it's going to be my pleasure to have on my friend Chris, which firefighter, and he's changing the world. And if you listen to this till the end, I think we're going to be able to change your eternity. So make sure you don't log off. But first, I want to thank our sponsors. Me is I'm sponsoring our own show. My book just came out, hit #1 on Amazon twice in the substance abuse category. If you pick up my book, you can pick it up on Amazon. 22% of the proceeds go to help Brian Gibson of Project Die Hard, which we'll be talking about today. So definitely pick up the book. Tell me what you think. And then the last person I got to thank is, and this is somebody I want to hook Chris up with also to get you on her show. She has a podcast called The Hoarding Solution, which deals with hoarding and mental health issues. But a lot of people don't realize how many firefighters get killed because they go into a house that's filled with hoard and they can't get back out. So definitely, guys, if you're interested in anything mental health or hoarding, check out The Hoarding Solution with Tammy Moses. So guys, like I said, this is going to be a fun episode. We're going to be talking about some great things, some a little bit touching things. But like I said, I guarantee you, if you listen till the end, something you'll hear is going to change your eternity. So guys, make sure you stay till the end. Chris, my brother, what's going on?
Amen and amen. That was incredible. Yeah, man, lots going on, and we're here today though, and just super pumped and very appreciative and blessed to be a part of your show, and for your audience. It's always humbling when you get the opportunity to be a part of an audience and someone's audience and their stage. And so I just want to say thank you for all you're doing, Richard, and just all that we get to do and the lives that we build upon and the foundation and platform that God has allowed you to use and in bringing me a part of it. So I'm super blessed, I guess is just where I'm going with that. I'm joyful to be here.
Well, I have to give shout out to Brian Gibson, Project Die Hard. He's the one that got us together. So I got to give him all props. So tell us a little bit about where you came from, where you grew up, and what kind of little boy was Chris?
So, man, I'm born and raised in Wichita, Kansas. Midwest kid. Been here my whole life, and was born to two very young parents. And fortunately, they didn't work out. My mom split when I was a year and a half, and then my dad did the best he could with what he had with being a single father. He while he had help, yes, from family, he also was a single dad. So a lot of it he was on his own. And so he had to figure it out and pick up the pieces as he went. And, God bless him. He, like anybody, myself included, did things that were good and bad. I definitely am appreciative of so many great things he did in my life and the man that I've become because of the good and the bad. We had a good living growing up, but also it was a little rough. I grew up the sex, drugs, and rock and roll style life, and so had to kind of overcome that, and just really put the pieces together a lot of times, especially as such a young kid. And then when he got remarried, I had a stepmom come along who. One thing I want to make very clear with everybody: don't vilify the people in my life or in my past when I tell you these stories because of God's forgiveness. We all make mistakes. We are all sinners and fallen short of the glory of God. And, I'm answering your question with the understanding that this is how I got to where I am now. So I always ask audiences to please don't get focused on, his dad this because, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll and all stuff. No, don't do that. Know that there is forgiveness in this and there's grace and mercy in this. I actually have, after I tell you what happened, I have a good relationship with my dad. I also have a good relationship with now my former stepmom. And so The reason why I preface that is because when her and my future stepbrother moved in, they had, she brought a lot of good things to the table. She got my dad to quit partying. She got me to start focusing on school. And as that started to happen, I also noticed some control things. And one of the things in that was they called us into their bedroom and gave us their expectations of my future stepbrother and I. And, they told us, we expect you guys to fight, you're brothers, it's going to happen, this and that, boys will be boys type of talk. And then they got specific. And they told him, you're going to do well in school, you're super smart, you're very creative. They told me that, well, you're going to struggle. Can't will almost always be a part of your regular vocabulary. And I was 10. And there's a piece of me, and I know there's people going, oh my gosh, how could someone say that? Well, one, a lot of people say that. I had teachers tell me that too. I had other family members. And part of that was because it was the path I was on. But to hear that and how my dad say that to me crushed me. And so to try and to bridge that gap, I started compensating with anger. I started saying, well, if you're telling me I'm not going to be able to do it, then I might as well not do it. And fast forward a few years, I was in the Boy Scouts and owe a lot to being a Boy Scout. And I had a leader, a mentor who came to me, and we were sitting at the picnic table drinking coffee. I was always, for some reason, I'm not an early morning person, but in scouts and camping, I am. And we were drinking coffee together. And he said, Chris, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I don't know, John. He goes, what do you mean you don't know? Like, you don't know because you're not trying anything, or you don't know because you don't care? And I said, well, I can't. I really can't do anything. So I guess we'll just have to see what happens. And he looked at me square in the face and he said, don't you ever say that again. Don't you ever let anybody tell you you can't do something. He goes, when you got God on your side, all things are possible. You can do it. I've seen the leader in you and how you can guide others too. And so that got me to thinking about my future and things that I would want to do. I wanted to be a fireman. It wasn't just that boyhood dream, love of fire trucks. I have a family member, one at the time, now there's multiples that are firefighters, but I watched him in his career. I had seen firefighters in action down the street from my house, and was just always just enamored with the fact that when people need help, they're always there. And that's what I was always really good at, was helping people. And so I had moved out of my house, was not a great split. My dad and I weren't getting along. My stepmom and I definitely were not getting along. I blamed them for a lot of things. And while sure, we can play the justification game, it still got to a point where now I'm an adult, I'm on my own, I need to figure this out. And I turned to the girl I was dating, and while we were engaged, she became pregnant, and I was 20 when he was born, and then her and I got divorced. And so again, I got crushed, like, well, I can't do this. They were right. I can't do it. I'm not good enough. So while wallowing in my pity in that, and I say that with respect to anybody that's struggling, know this. When you hear my story, know this. You can rise above it. You can overcome it. I'm only giving you small snippets of to what has happened in my life and what I have overcome. And that's not to look to me. That's to look to what God has done in me. Because my childhood memory came back to me after my divorce, after I moved out, because if that hadn't happened for me, I would have never become a firefighter. I wouldn't have helped people in the way that I've gotten to help them. And so one day, my aunt called me. She said, hey, what are you doing tonight? And I said, I don't know, I'm probably going to drink some beer, watch a movie with my son. She said, no, you're not. You're going to come walk in the city parade with us. Firefighters and their families are going to be allowed to do this together. I was like, okay. And I got around some guys. I ran into an old high school friend of mine, just gotten hired on. And he said, hey, he goes, I remember you talking about wanting to do this. Why aren't you here with us? Why aren't you in uniform? I don't know, man. I probably can't do it. He said, dude, you can. And this was yet again, just another person, and kind of, if you want to call it random coincidence, that said, you can do this. And so I realized I could. And so I went to my uncle. I said, hey, I remember at one point in time, I told you that I was going to be a firefighter. He said, okay. Let's do it. And so he ran me through the process. Anybody who knew me at that time knew that I hated reading, I hated studying, I hated school. Guess what? I had to go back to school. I had to become an EMT basic. And that was a semester-long class. And it was just these little snippets of God saying, hey, there's more coming. There's more, but you got to keep looking to me. You have to keep searching me. You have to keep trusting me. You've got to have the faith and the hope and the love. Now, during this time, I was still just boggled all over the place. I was broken. I was beat down. I was making poor choices, doing some of the same things my dad had done, even though I promised I'd never do that. And then I got hired on, so I was like, well, I got to clean up because I don't need to mess this up.
All right, now
And
a couple
yeah,
questions before we, because now I have a lot of friends that are police officers, firefighters, and I'm hooked on the show 911. I love it. I watch it religiously. And some of the things that I watch, even though a lot of it is not real, or a lot of it is how many disciplines you guys have to learn. It's not just taking out a hose and spraying some water. So talk to us about what it was like going through the academy as a probie.
yeah. Recruit class was an interesting experience to say the least. My class, there was 15, 18 of us. And our class was 12 weeks long. Now in Wichita, they run their own academy. And it is. So before you can even get hired on, like I said, you have to be an EMTB. You have to have that medical license because we run as a medical first responder in addition to being firefighters. Now we work hand in hand with the ambulance service, and paramedics, but for the most part, most of us are EMTBs. And so once you got done with that and you went through the hiring process, I got pushed in ways I never thought. And that was kind of where I was going about this whole cleaning up and getting my mind right, getting my mindset the way that I needed to be. Because if I hadn't done that and would have kept those can'ts in my life and I wouldn't be good enough in my life, I wouldn't have made it through because we did. There were some things I learned in scouts, such as basic knots that we did that it was like, okay, I can do those. Pulling the hose, there is some technique to it for sure, but it was like, okay, I can do that. But then it also turned into, you know, being really not being tunnel vision, but being focused on what's going on around you. So you can watch the scenario, watch the scene, see what you're doing. You add in, you've got search and rescue. You've got rapid intervention crews, which are dedicated to the crews that are inside the structure fighting the fire. You have ventilation techniques that you have to learn, forcible entry techniques you have to learn. And then you've also got to understand that you're a public servant. So when you're out at the store or you're out in the public, you're in the public eye, you've got kids looking up to you. So you've also got to have the prevention education down really well, but you've also got to have that servant's heart to be ready to help in any moment, in any situation. One of the things for us in our department is 87.5% of our calls were not fire related. They were medicals, they were car wrecks, they were basically anything not pertaining to fire. If you call 911 and you didn't just need a police officer, not a knock on cops, I'm just saying that just that separation there, you had to know to be ready what to do. But one of the coolest things that I really appreciated about our training academy, our training division, and what happened when you got out of class and got on a station was our department was very focused on training, which I'm a huge proponent of training. I love, even when I was a Pizza Hut manager, I was a trainer. I trained people because if you can't get the basics, you're not going to get to the advanced. And if you don't keep training on the advanced, you're going to fall back to basics, which isn't a bad thing. But then you're not going to move forward or move upward. And so having the crews that I had with me was absolutely huge. We trained together, we worked together, and then yes, there is the stereotypical, we ate together, we sleep in the station. We do life together. I mean, you're a family here.
That's one thing I love about firefighters, police officers, veterans. we know that there's a thin red line, there's a thin blue line, a thin green line, where even if we're, even if we're not in the same disciplines, that if we get together and we meet each other within 5 minutes, we can tell each other our deepest secrets. But when we go home, we don't talk about what we do on the job. And, for something that really astonished me when I found out that the average lifespan of an American male is 78 years old. The average lifespan of a first responder is 58 years old. So there's a 21-year difference. And I want to talk about that. But I think one thing that I love about firefighters especially is, that if you have a bad day, somebody's not coming home. One of your brothers, if you don't have that guy there, you got to have their backs at all times, because that if you don't, they're not coming back, or you're not coming back. So what was that like to have that realization? Hey guys, if we're not on point, somebody's not coming home, and it could be me.
So a slogan that we have is everybody goes home, and so it's the understanding that yes, it's us, but it's also those that, we swore to save and protect and rescue. And so that's where that training really comes in handy. But one of the things that I'd hear a lot of people say is, "Oh, you guys are so fearless. You have no fear." Or how do you do it? Because, you've got to be afraid. It's like, well, there's this balancing to it. Deep down inside, like you said, Richard, is that there is this possibility that something goes wrong. A bad day just went to a worse day. And it could be the worst day, which, no one wants. So you you have to put it out of your mind. You gotta take that out. And that's what I think that's what really just kind of separates the mindset there, where everybody always says, when everyone else is running out, first responders and military are the ones running in. And so that mentality is, some people will call it the hero's mentality. I'm not a big fan of that, just because it's more of just, there's a fear there, but it's a healthy fear, knowing that if I don't do my job right, something bad could really happen. But at the same time, if I only live in that and I get stuck in that, I may not get off the truck. And my job is to get off that truck. My job is to go do what we were called to do. And so you got to just know that it's there, but it's a healthy fear. It's a healthy understanding that in my mind, I know that this could happen, but I'm not going to let that happen, because I'm going to go do my job. And I know those around me are going to do their job, excuse me. And when we do that, that's when, given the situation, the best of things can happen.
Now, where I'm sitting right now, I'm in New Jersey, and if I go stand on my front porch, I can overlook where the Twin Towers once stood.
Mm.
And we knew firefighters that were working that day, and 343 of them didn't come home that night. And that day, they actually changed my life. So, my book actually is based on, a hero's journey, what a hero actually is. And if you actually read it, the first opening quote is a quote from Mr. Steve Reeves, Christopher Reeves, the original Batman, about what heroes actually are. And in my mindset, firefighters are the ultimate heroes. So I just want to say thank you. It means so much to me, everything that you are doing. And I just wanted to put that out there, why it means so much to me.
Well, thank you. I remember 9/11 as, anyone who was awake and conscious and alive during that time. And, yes, we had the 343. We had, countless officers and people who died that day for a senseless act of violence. And, I wasn't on the job during that time, but my uncle was. And then, coming on it a few years later, it's still discussed. We always watch the videos and the films, especially around, tribute time, 9/11 time, no matter the year. And it just, to see those pictures, to see those who just, they knew. I mean, you hear the interviews, they knew. A lot of them knew. They had to have known when they were going in. There is a huge possibility. I mean, there's a big difference between a building like that and a major unknown of exactly what has happened other than a plane hit the building and it's, so far up versus going into a single family dwelling or a house fire. And so to have that check of mentality that uh, especially the ones that showed up very first on scene, um, I just, my heart goes to their families. My heart goes to their soul. They are heroes. I've never considered myself a hero in the respect of, I wear a cape. I just know that I did what I was called to do in the times that I was called to do it. And I still feel like I'm doing that now. It's just in a different way. But for those that are still doing it, my heart always goes out to firefighters and police, EMS, our military. In the same way, like you said, for someone that's willing to so selflessly serve, knowing that they may have to give up their life, that always just changes my heart rate instantly.
Now, did you have the faith when you were a firefighter, or how did you find your, or I know that he calls us, but how did you find the faith that you have? And was it in the beginning, middle, or end of your firefighter career?
Man, Richard knows how to bring it full circle because that was a part of as a fireman, and being divorced. I actually grew up in the church. My grandparents always went to church. Been in 7 different denominations. Baptized 3 times. One of them didn't. Went the wrong way there. Excuse me. Didn't count. So in a lot of ways, I was still very confused on where I stood with God and what God wanted me to do, other than the fact I just knew to pray. I just always knew to pray. By all rights and measures, realistically, I shouldn't be a believer based on statistics and how I was brought up, the things I was taught, the things I was told, and some other things that had happened with different preachers, pastors, things like that. Nothing grotesquely bad, but just not in line with scripture and how we should pray, how we should confess, how we should live our lives. And so during that time, I was still being tested. And a year or so into it, my grandma had called me and she said she wanted my oldest son, baptized. And I thought, I have been screwing up quite a bit. I probably should go back to church. And so I did, and he got baptized. And then I got invited to help out with the youth. And it was something that I had remembered from high school when I was going through one of the worst times in my household of my life and just not knowing what to do, not knowing how to contemplate the things that were going on. God had entered my life. I mean, he'd been there. Let me rephrase that. God had always been in my life. He's in all our lives. I had recognized that he was entered into my life. And it was with someone else praying over me that I didn't even know their name. They just felt called to come up. And so as I started working through that and helping the youth and working with the youth and hearing them and their struggles at home, there was a couple of them that kind of were going through some of the things I did. So I got to be that light. I got to smile and say, listen, I don't have it all figured out and I'm not perfect, but I promise you, you're going to get through this. You've got to keep your faith. And then there were things that I saw as a fireman that really tested my faith, that really tugged at me. And God would just say, hey, listen, remember Jeremiah 29:11, I know the plans I have for you. I did the same thing for them. You may not understand it, but I'm here. I'm present in this moment. And so it became stronger and stronger. And I started to see God show up more and more in my life. I started to recognize that the whole time through all those things I was talking about earlier, that he was there. He was guiding me through it. God brings you to it. He'll bring you through it. And those things weren't happening to me. They were happening for me. And
That's
which sounds weird.
That's one of my favorite quotes ever my mentor, Mr. Ed Milet, always says that, whatever happened to you, it's happening for you, and everything is a teachable moment. And if you can live your life like that and start asking yourself, why not me, instead of saying why me, your whole life and will change.
And something I want to say to that, if you're struggling with that, first and foremost, I want you to know I did too. And I still do. There's still times where I'm like, God, why is this happening to me? And he's going, I've told you otherwise. I learned that from Ed as well. Tony Robbins says it a lot too. We all have our unique journeys and paths. And so mine as a firefighter, one of the things I did, and this is something I recommend to everybody, is there were always certain crew members that, we clicked a little bit more than the others. Not a knock on anybody. It's not that I wasn't friends with them. Just, our personalities lined up a little bit more. And there was a group of us that said, hey, I'm praying for you. And we held each other accountable. And we could seek each other out for help. I had some incredible senior firefighters and experienced firefighters, officers who poured into me and raised me up in the way I should go. It wasn't just being a great fireman. It was being a great dad. It was being a great husband. It was being a great civil servant. It was being a great Christian, being a man who could believe, but also knowing that life is going to humble us. There's going to be struggles that come our way. But when we can, like Richard just said, everybody, when we can look at it, where's the opportunity in this? How do I find the optimism in this? And we look for that. We look for that faith. We look for that joy, even in the midst of struggle. That's hard. That's so hard. And so if you're going through it, please know my heart goes out to you right now.
And I think one thing that is a good thing and then a bad thing at the same time, you know, veterans, firefighters, any first responder, we're very good at compartmentalizing. Like one of my best friends, he works for the police department, and he says, Rich, he's like, like last week, his wife asked him how his day was, and he just came back from a quadruple homicide involving children. And he says, I can't tell my wife how my day really was. He says, so a lot of it, because I asked him, I said, why do you think, first responders don't live past the age of 58? And he says, because we compartmentalize so much, but we keep it inside until one day, we're retired now. And all I have is my side gun and a bottle of liquor and my memories, because I never talked about it. I never got help. So, what are your thoughts on stuff like that?
So one of the big things that our department did was we did create a critical incident stress team. Um, and it was a team that if you could meet with them anonymously if there was an event such as what you said. Those that could be called were immediately called and sent to the station to sit down with everybody and talk to them. But I think one of the healthiest things, I remember the first call that really just sent me for a tailspin. I got back in the truck. I was young, not even just an age. I didn't even have my year on yet. And it was rough. And I remember I got in the truck and my lieutenant, who one of the most incredible men I've ever met in my life. And he said, "Are you okay?" And I just need a moment. He goes, "Chris, we're back on track after this call. Can you make another?" I said, "I can make another call. I promise you that. I'm okay." He goes, "Okay," and left it at that. And I knew I could. I honestly could. Um, so we got back to the station. We didn't make another call. We got back to the station, and I got out of the truck, and I made a phone call, just someone I could talk to on the phone because I wanted to hear my son's voice. And so I got to hear my son's voice, and then I walked into the station, excuse me, inside the day room, the kitchen of the station, and everybody's sitting around the table. And my lieutenant looked at me and goes, "Sit down right now. We're going to talk about this. We're going to make sure you're okay. I know you said you are, and you promised me." He goes, "And I believe you." He had 30 plus years on. He was a good read and a good character, a good judgment of character on things like that. And what that said to me was these guys care. And so if you're in a position, and when I say position, a leader does not have to be rank, title, position. They don't have to be a lieutenant or a captain. It could be that person who cares. That's a leader. If you're willing to guide somebody, you are a leader. If you're willing to help somebody, you are a leader. And in that moment, every single one of them at that table was a leader. And that's one of the things you'll always hear firemen talk about is the dinner table. That's where we solve all of life's issues. And we eat some really good food. But it's in that moment. People ask me, for those of you who don't know, I'm early retired. We'll get into that later. But they always ask me, what do you miss? I was like, the biggest thing I miss the dinner table.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand that, let me give you a little glimpse. It's where we solve the world's problems. Doesn't mean we literally solved them, but it's where we talk it out. It's where we hash it out. It's where we work it out. You got something going on at home and it's affecting work. We're talking about it. You just made that call that just is wrecking you. We're going to talk about it. We just need to discuss things around the station. We're going to talk about it. But the dinner table is just where we go. And it just allows for that community. It allows for that family feel. It allows you to know that, let's say I didn't get it all out on the table, literally and figuratively. I also know, what, if I go home and all of a sudden this hits me, this comes up, I can call that guy right now and they're going to answer the phone and they're going to be there for me. And so as I grew up in that, I realized, well, okay, now I'm getting some time on. There's some others that have come up, behind me that are younger. And now it's my turn to do the same. But even as that transition happened, those that were still older than me, more experienced than me, wiser than me, to say the least, were still there for me as well. And so that's a huge part of what I've always loved and gained from being a first responder. I was not in the military, if I didn't say that earlier, but I've been around a lot of military personnel and military veterans, and I see the same thing. And
Yeah.
so I just, and police and EMS too. I just see that same thing. Like there's just like you said, when we all get around each other, we just start talking and sharing stories. We sit around the campfire type of thought there, and you just start to pick up on, okay, these are people I can discuss this with. Like you said earlier, I couldn't tell my wife these things.
Yeah.
I couldn't, and there were times that I didn't realize because of past anger issues and that I would come home from something and just be in a bad mood and be, using language I shouldn't be using in the house. Shouldn't use it anyways, but from a human perspective, should definitely not been using it in the house. And there was one day she just looked at me and she goes, "You are not at the firehouse. I'm not going to put up with that." And I stopped and I kind of looked at her and I was like, "You're right." And I was working part-time with another fireman who had been a part of the situation. And I knew I was going to see him in an hour. I was like, I gotta switch the mask for a second here, put on my home face and be at home, be present. And then literally we got to the job site and my face must have switched while I was driving. I don't even remember. And he took one look at me and he goes, "Well, we're not starting this till we talk."
And I can agree, like there's times when somebody asks me, what do I miss? Do I miss, in the rain? Do I miss the 24-hour shifts? Do I miss eating crappy food? No, but I miss the times where we're in the middle of the desert. It's 3 a.m. We're sitting on top of the turret, just eating nasty food, talking shit, and just talking about each other and with each other and crying on each other's shoulders. So that's what I find that a lot of people, when they get out, they really miss. So in a second, I want to talk about, why you got out. But a lot of our audience is veterans. A lot of them are first responders. And a lot of them struggled when they had to hang up their uniform for the last time. Because, not only do you lose your career, you lose the money, but like for me, when I got hurt and I couldn't see, I couldn't shoot, so they discharged me. All right, after I got back in the second time, after being thrown out for being a drug addict the first time, I tried everything I could to become the ultimate soldier. But 23 years later, I have to hang up my uniform. Now I'm no longer Sergeant Kaufman. I'm Richard, and I don't know who I am. and I'm scared. And that was the day that I attempted suicide, was Memorial Day 2012. So talk to us about, why you got out and what it was like hanging up your uniform for that final time. And did you struggle?
So I'll start that with the fact I didn't know that was going to be my final time, my last shift. I had no idea. So I've had knee and back problems for quite a while. And one of the things that I'd been to all kinds of specialists, primary cares, therapist, physical therapists, chiropractors, all that. And they all kept saying, I can fix you for now, but now I had my plan. My plan was I was going to get promoted to captain, which did not happen. Um, is what it is, and make it 35 years. I made it 14, barely. So what happened was I'd already had 2 knee surgeries per knee throughout my career. I was getting threatened with back surgeries and was just getting to the point where I was like, I got to hope I can make it to 20 as a firefighter on the floor. I just, doing downtown work and things like that just wasn't something that I felt God had called me to, but being on the floor was. And so I was kind of ignoring what God was telling me. God was calling me to do, saying, hey, I've got another way for you to help people. You did this so you could help people, but I'm ready to move you on. And I ignored it and I ignored it. And so, me being the thick-headed person that I am, God said, well, I'm going to make it obvious then. And at the time, my daughter was 2, and she wanted me to pick her up before bed. And I went to pick her up, and I got her about 2 inches off the floor, and my back went out. Like, I dropped her to the floor. I'm just so grateful she was barely off the floor, because I dropped her back to her feet. And I know my wife. I don't remember what my daughter said. My wife was like, "Babe, are you okay?" I was like, "I can't stand up." She goes, "What do you mean you can't stand?" I said, "I literally cannot stand straight up. My back's done." And so she said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I can't go to work tomorrow. There's no way. I couldn't do my job effectively." So I said, "I'm going to call in, let them know, I can't be there." And so then I'm going to have to figure something out. This isn't working. And so little did I know that the shift before that was actually my last shift. And I actually had all my gear in my truck. I was at one station because I was the acting lieutenant, and then was going back to my home station to be a driver and help with this big training cycle we had going on. I mean, I'd have been moving people around. We'd have been doing a lot that day, and I just knew I couldn't. And so as time went through that and I wasn't getting any relief, I was popping ibuprofen like they were Tic Tacs, hoping to be able to go to the doctor to get some pain meds, which I'm not a big fan of pain meds. Um, and I started praying one night. I couldn't sleep at all. And it was one of the few times that I could walk around the house. And so I plugged in my headphones, started listening to some praise and worship. And the next thing I know, I was on my knees praying. And I just said, God, either you're going to show me or I'm going to go do this. For the record, if you want to challenge God like that, He's going to let you know. He's going to let you know. Because I went to stand up and my left knee, which is my worst knee, gave out. Now keep in mind, I'd called in because of my back. This was my knees. And I went back down to the ground. And he gave me this quote that if I hear this, because the next day I was headed to a brand new physical therapist to see if we could do something new. And so he said, this is what you're going to hear. And I know not everybody hears God's voice audible like that. I actually, until that moment, never really had, didn't even know that that could actually happen, even though I'd heard plenty of stories, seen plenty of testimonies, but it was audible. And so I went to the physical therapist and she started going through all the exercises and I cut her off and I finished all those exercises for her. And she kind of laughed and said, "You really are a lifer." I said, yeah, I am. She goes, "Well, I can fix you for now, but," which is literally what I heard at 3 a.m. that night, which I had heard several times before. And I knew right then and there, there's no way I can safely and effectively do my job. And so I called my uncle, who was one of the primary drivers to me ever becoming a firefighter. And I said, "Hey, man, 14 and a half years ago, almost 15 years ago to the day, actually, no, I'm sorry, it was 15 years ago to almost to the day. I said, I called you, told you I wanted to be a fireman. Now I got to hang it up." And I'll tell you what, that was the scariest phone call I've ever made in my life. I didn't want to make it because I was afraid of judgment, which has to do with past hurts and past feelings and things that I had experienced in the past. And he started laughing at me. He goes, "Okay, okay. I've seen you try and stand up out of a chair. I've been waiting for this phone call." Like, oh, duly noted. He said, "You got to do what you got to do to take care of you and your family." I was like, "Dude," I said, "I can't take care of anybody right now."
Yeah.
He said, "Well, call your chief." So I
I had
called
a
my chief. My
question to ask you because
Yeah.
this is near and dear to my heart. You know, I went from one weekend to being able to operate and shoot 4 miles away on a M1 Abrams tank to the next, 2 weeks later, not being able to see around my house, to have my wife have to guide me to the bathroom. So what was it like knowing, we go, and I'm not saying hero to zero, literally, but, going from, being a man that's running into fires to now you can't even pick up your daughter. What was that like emotionally?
Well, considering that was 3 years ago, I still struggle with it. And a lot of that centers around our identity. I would say forever, and especially as a youth pastor, I'd tell the kids, your identity's in Christ. I am one in whom Christ dwells. But I'll tell you what, it was soul crushing when I realized I was hanging it up. Um, I knew it was coming. I had relief in the fact that it was coming, but the relief was coming from the fact that I didn't have to be afraid of what if my back would have gone out in a fire. We talked earlier about bad day to worse. That was what was going through my head. It was like, okay, well now I'm keeping everybody safer by not being there. So there for a while, it's like, it made me feel good. It's like, okay, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. When I signed that dotted line and officially realized that I'd handed over my badge and that day, that last shift, I had hung it up for the last time. I went home and uh, just kind of just sat there and just thought about it. There was a piece of me that tried to pick up drinking again, which I did to a point. Luckily enough, my wife, who is a huge support system for me, did not let me do that and helped hold me accountable. So I'm very blessed in the support that I have. I had a lot of different guys reach out. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you okay? Do you need anything? If you need anything, call us. So support and community has been huge for the whole thing, but it wasn't until I actually said it out loud because I was kind of battling, with my identity in life, what I am. What am I? What am I supposed to do?
Hmm.
For me, being a fireman, not the action is easy, but being a fireman's easy. People ask you, "What do you do?" "I'm a fireman."
Yeah.
Oh, and so that became second nature. That was my second nature,
Yeah.
and it was my identity, and I wrapped myself up in that so
Mhm.
much, and it's so easy to do.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people do stuff like that, and so for me, it was soul crushing. I had a hard time letting it go. I'd sit there and share the same, what stories I could, share the same stories
Yeah.
over and over again to my kids and to my wife and to my neighbors and to other people. And my wife and my son are like, "Dad, I could share this story better than you could." And it
You
was
know,
a buddy of mine.
I want to talk about that because, like I said, um, I've interviewed now, I think almost 400, almost 500 people on the show. And a lot of us, when we get out, or military veteran, what have you, even, professional athletes, you know, it becomes our identity. Like I had a young guy on, Mr. Daryl Stinson. He was a defensive lineman, and now he's a speaker. But he's like, I didn't know who I was when I hung up my cleats because I was no longer, a starter on Central Michigan, and who am I? So a lot of people struggle with either reinventing and reimagining themselves, or they just hold on to that crap for too long. It's like, okay, you may have been for me, you may have been in the military 12 years ago. You're not in the military now. So like somebody asked me the other day, and it was the first time ever. He asked me, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a podcast host, an author, and a speaker. And I didn't mention veteran because, like Tony Robbins said, you got to grow. And, if you're standing in the past, you can't move on. So how did you reinvent and reimagine yourself?
Well, it was a buddy of mine. I actually got asked a question, firefighter wise, which is not uncommon. People know they ask you questions, and I was sharing it, and then kept going. And this buddy, brother to say the least, and he just looked at me. He said, "Dude," he goes, "I appreciate what you did in the first 5 minutes." He goes, "But for the past 20," I was like, I can't wait till you realize you're not a fireman anymore." And he's that person that can call me out. He's that person that can talk to me in that way. And I just sat back and I thought, I've been wallowing in self pity and muck and mire that I'm not a fireman anymore. My boots are stuck in the mud. No, they're not stuck in the mud. You hung them up because God called you to do something else. And what that turned into was my identity was helping people. My identity is my calling from God to help others. And so not being able to do it in that fashion doesn't mean I don't have another way of doing it. But you have to start letting go. I'm not saying that happens overnight. Like I said, it's been 3 years, and there's still moments where I'm like, I see a fire truck drive by, and I'm like, I used to drive those.
Yeah, I
Oh,
get
and
it.
I
I,
picture myself behind that wheel, running, kicking on the lights and siren, and heading out and turning whatever direction, and do the whole. I wonder what they're headed to. What would I do if I was there? Or I see videos on YouTube, things like that, and it's you just have to start to let go, and you gotta take that energy and pour it into what you're doing now, whatever that it is. For me, it's life coaching, it's leadership consulting, it's speaking, it's being in a podcast. If I spent this whole time only talking about being a fireman, am I really helping everybody? And I'm not necessarily talking about sharing what I've overcome, how I overcome it, things like if I just literally just say or talked about the fire trucks, what it's like to drive them, things like that, I'm not truly helping people. So it's realizing you're not stuck in the muck and mire. You're just headed for something else. And you gotta start to look forward and onward. Yeah, you glance in the rearview mirror so you can learn. If we spend all our time driving looking in the rearview mirror, be a lot more car wrecks on the road. There's already enough of those. So let's get focused on looking forward. Let's get focused on moving onward. And we do that by looking upward. I've now shifted my prayer life to saying, hey, God, you've called me to something else. Show me. Show me where I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to get there, how I'm supposed to do it. And I now look at life like if I wasn't doing that, one answer that call, I wouldn't be on this show today. I wouldn't know Richard Kaufman, who I'm incredibly blessed to know. And it's still just getting to know. I mean, we're only scratching the surface of getting to know one another and being a part of each other's lives. And that doesn't mean I've forgotten being a fireman. It doesn't mean I forget the firemen and the firefighters that I've worked with. I still do life with them. I still see them. If they called, I'm there for them. But it's also not to say that things haven't changed. Whether you have that's why I always, I struggle with the identity when I first started telling people, they're like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a retired firefighter. They'd look at me. You're not old enough.
yeah, my God, no,
Ouch.
no,
Ouch. But I can't tell them I'm a fireman.
because
But I didn't quit. I didn't quit necessarily. I mean, yeah, I left earlier, but by city standards, I'm retired. And it wasn't medical discharge. It was my choice. It was not a forced thing. I could have gotten things done. I could have gone back to chiropractic, could have done the physical therapy. Still probably could have been healthy enough to do the job. But is that really worth it? Is that worth it for them? Am I doing a service to the other firefighters that are on the floor or to the citizens that I swore to protect? And then you throw in the fact that if I'm not even protecting them right, does that mean I'm going to be able to take care of my family? Does that mean I take care of myself? And so I had to start recognizing that I was removed for this for a reason. What happens for me? And
yeah,
once I started recognizing, make that mind shift, and the other thing I did too, and I've already encouraged everybody to do this, I started reaching out for help.
yeah,
And I'm not talking like a sit down therapy session per se, but just hey, what do you see in me?
yeah,
Yeah, how do you see me? Or hey, I'm really struggling with this, man. I'm having a hard time. Like I got a hold of some of the guys that are legitimately retired, and just started chatting with them. Hey, what'd you feel when this happened? What'd you feel when that happened? And I had one that he's a retired chief. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. And we were sitting talking, and he said, do you miss it? Well, of course I miss it. He said, what do you miss? I said, I miss driving the trucks. I miss putting out the fires. I miss knowing that I was doing, what we did. We did our job. I said, I miss that dang dinner table. He started laughing. He goes, I do too. He said, but I made it to my full end. He goes, I want to know, do you miss it? Are you okay? And then my buddy saying, I can't wait till you realize you're not a fireman anymore, came flooding back. And I looked and I said, I am, but I'm struggling with letting go. And he said, Chris, I don't blame you. He goes, you left while still a driver. You left only halfway through your career. He goes, but you have something new to do.
Yeah.
Because, and I've seen it in you. I've seen the way I saw the way you responded on the job. Now I'm seeing the way you're responding here. It's a different light. He goes, I'm doing new things now. He goes, you got to move on, buddy.
And, a lot of people, when they finish their career at a younger age, they don't know what to do. Now, one of my mentors, his name is John Lee Dumas. He had one of the best podcasts ever. I mean, he gets 1 million downloads a month, and he's generating over $150,000 a month from it. But he's mentoring me. But, he says, if you don't know what you want to do, he says, ask your friends, what do you think I'm good at? Where do you see my strengths? Where do you see my weaknesses? Maybe if, like for me, somebody says, well, you love talking to people. You love interviewing people. So that's how I came up with this after I couldn't see. So I had to pivot. So, what are your thoughts on, of course, I know the Lord is moving me. I know he's got, but, and I want to digress because you said something earlier and I felt I wanted to hit on it. You said that you actually heard the Lord talk to you audibly. And I went through something, it wasn't audibly. My father passed on Valentine's Day this year.
Oh.
And I said to that day, I said, Lord, if he's with you, give me a sign. And I'm thinking, what is the most absurd thing I can think of? And it was a parrot. And we went out to dinner 3 nights later at a restaurant, and some lady came over to the table with a parrot. And I was just like, okay, Lord, I get it. Dad's with you. So I believe that the Lord still does miracles. He still listens to you. He's still around. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that the Lord is still moving in our midst. He's not a dead God. He's an alive God. And sometimes if you don't, just worry about what you're going to ask for, because you might just get it and it might just be a parrot. But so I just wanted to say that, that a lot of times we have to move on and pivot to something new. And a lot of it's, sometimes we just have to ask our closest people around us, because they'll see us, our goods and our bads. So sometimes we might have to ask, what do you think I'm good at? Just like you said, you talked to your friend and he gave you that advice, that he's seen that you're a people person, you care and you love. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, there is nothing more honest than asking your inner circle, what are my strengths and weaknesses and what am I good at? And when I say your inner circle are just the tightest. I keep it right around 5 people.
Me too.
That they're the ones that can get away with saying the types of things that I told you my brother earlier said to me. And it's just not one of those like, oh, you said that, I'm going to punch you. But if he says it, it's okay type moments, although that can exist too. This is when he says it, I know he means it.
Yeah.
I know he cares enough to tell me the truth, but also hold me accountable to it and mentor me and guide me through that as well. And the biggest part of that is that's not just having an honest conversation with a friend, a brother, a sister, a pastor, your spouse, whoever's in that inner circle, whoever's that tight with you, that not only gets away with saying it, but will support you in it. They'll help you in it. They'll guide you in it. But it's also having that honest conversation with yourself. It's also sitting back saying, okay, well, I'm done with that now. I still lived it. I still have memories from it. I still have, things that I can use it. I look now with the leadership things that I do, a huge chunk of that came from being a firefighter and having great leaders around me. Okay, So what can I do with that? Whether it's creating a company or creating a podcast or writing a book or going out and speaking or volunteering somewhere or joining a new organization and not just going, huh, I work here, I'm going to punch the clock, but actually implementing that, actually taking over, the position that you're in and giving your absolute best, just as you did with the thing that has caused this identity crisis of saying, this is what I was, this is what I did, I enjoyed it, I loved it, I did it. Go out and find that. Go out and search it.
And I love that, like like I said, I got thrown out for being a drug addict, and then I came back in, and after 9/11, I turned my whole career around. But when I got promoted to be a non-commissioned officer is when I really took it seriously, and I tried to become a leader, to where, like one of my friends, Gary Vaynerchuk, always talks about, the best business thing you can ever do is care.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't realize, a person can hold a rank and a title, but it doesn't mean they respect you. But I know that if I took care of my guys, just like I never ate before my guys, I never, whatever happened, they came first. But if I asked them to run through a brick wall, there's no question. So talk to us about what real leadership is and not what people think it is.
If you want to be a leader, you got to be the example. And you just said it, like you didn't eat before your guys, but it's kind of like the parent and kid talk. There's times I got to be your parent, and there's times I'm gonna be your friend. I think that's the same thing as a leader. But if you're just there telling them what to do, giving them orders, saying you're going to go do this, this, and this, and you don't ever show up as an example, or you're sitting in there with your feet kicked up on the table going, well, drinking the coffee and saying, I got the bars, I don't have to go do that. You're not going to have that respect. So some of the best officers I was ever around were the ones that came out and trained with us, not just, hey guys, go make sure you're training on this. They came out and trained with us. And I was very blessed to have, great officers that did that. But going back to that first officer that I spoke to you earlier about, that looked at me and said, are you okay? And then brought the guys together, that I understood. It wasn't just like, in this moment, make sure you're okay. No, we're here for you. My very first shift on the job was a Saturday. And Saturdays, it was traditionally big cleanup day. We'd wash the trucks, scrub the floors, just, generalized cleaning. But the cleaning the bay floor could take a lot of work. My station, we had an extra big station, and my lieutenant was out there, and he had either a mop or a squeegee in his hand, and I went to take it from him, which was my first mistake. But as a rookie, it's just what you do. It's not a hazing thing. You don't let your officer, like it's like if you see your grandma carrying groceries, go ask if she needs help if you're able to do that. Okay. And I was more than able. I was done with my part. So I was like, well, I can't be standing here and watch my lieutenant squeegee water. So I'm going to take it from him. And he held it up like this. And he said, I dare you to take this out of my hands. And I froze. I was like, nope. You're holding a 5-foot stick in your hand. Not even going to try it. And my senior private was over off to the side laughing at me. He goes, do it, kid. I want to see it. And then shook his head like this. And I went, okay, probably shouldn't do that. So he looked at me. He goes, do you know why I'm out here right now? You're bored? I don't know. He goes, because I want you to understand, there will never be a time that I ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. He goes, I'll tell you right now, it goes beyond sweeping a mop on the floor or wiping up a toilet. He goes, we're going into a fire. I tell you, let's go. I want you to know from this moment, as simplistic as sweeping the floor is, I'm here with you, I'm here for you, and I'm not going to put you into something I'm not willing to do or go through myself. And so in that moment, it created that sense, again, of community. It created that sense of trust, that reliance of, okay, someone with this much time on the job who's been through some of the worst that this job can throw at him, and he's here for me. He didn't have to do that. You hear stories all the time of leaders who have failed. You can Google it if you want.
Yeah.
But when you look at a crisis and you look at a situation, those that that rose up, you can see the respect and admiration that people have for them around them. And they're also the ones that are saying, okay, I need Richard to go do this. I need Chris to go over there and do that. And we do it. Not
Yeah.
out of not out of an obligated order, but out of, we know each other that well that he just sent me to my greatest strength, or she.
Yeah.
Okay. Sent Richard over there. And now I know that even though I'm not facing that person, they're still watching over me.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be just a military or firefighter representation. I see it in businesses and companies all the time. You can walk through an office and see who the real leaders are. And again, it's not just based on rank, title, and position.
Well,
I've made a few.
like The Rock says, he says he treats the janitor the same way he treats the COO of a company. And I think that says volumes, right there, because you'll never know when that janitor becomes the CEO. You know
Well,
what I mean?
how many times have you had a janitor in disguise?
Yeah.
You got all the undercover boss.
Yeah.
I love watching that.
Yeah.
Because you do, and I know there's some staging to it, things like that, Hollywood, whatever. It's not the point, because I've been a part of secret shopper programs.
Well, see, like
And
I'm a big Joel Osteen guy, and I'm reading.
Yeah.
Before he got on, I'm reading his book. Something about every day is a Friday, and it talks about how be nice to the janitor, because he literally holds the key to the kingdom and knows everything that's going on in that company. So that's just something I think I find amusing. So talk to us about what you're doing today, and how we can find you and how we can support your mission.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I launched a life coaching program, Lead Your Greatest Life, where I guide people on mindset and how to set a mindset, how to say can't, never, did. Because that word can't, it can be applicable, it's a word, but from an attitude and a mindset, can't, never, did anything for you. All it's done is hold you back from your dreams, your desires, and goals and visions that God has placed in your life. So I guide people through that. We go through a journey together. We work on that together. I also do leadership consulting based on what we just talked about. That communication is everything. Communication is just something, it has to be foundational in any relationship. I'm not just talking business on this. Yes, it's a leadership chat, but in your marriages, with your kids, with yourself, how you communicate with yourself is how you communicate with others. And then we work through training and development, because as I said earlier, being a fireman, training is huge. Military training is huge. EMS, police, even in business, it should be huge. It's got to be something that's foundational, and it's got to be effective.
I don't know if
what it does.
My friend Joe DeSena actually has a show called No Retreat Business Boot Camp. Definitely check it out. He's one
Okay.
of he actually works with Fortune 50 companies and the military and police officers and firefighters. I think it's on Discovery. But if you love business and you love talking about mindset, definitely check out No Retreat Business.
That's cool. Thank you. I just wrote that down. No retreat business. That's awesome. And but it's things like that. So training and development is not just about me coming into the room saying, okay, everybody's got to go to this training. I got to train myself too. And then, when we're doing all that, safety in crisis is always a potential concern. We work towards not having a safety issue or a crisis issue, but it's going to happen. It's life. And whether it's in business or whether it's in our own personal lives, when you've communicated, when you've trained and developed with the right people, your inner circle, or specifically as a business, as I related earlier, of having that leader who can, stand up on the platform and go, okay, I want Chris to go over there, I want Richard to go over there. When you've done those things together and you have that community, you have your inner circle, you have your outer circle, and pending the situation, you know who you can trust. Who can I rely on to take care of this? Or who can I rely on to talk to? Who can I rely on to give me that help and that accountability? Who can I rely on when the chips are totally stacked against me and I am crawling through muck and mire? Who can I? And if we're not out doing those things, the leader in us is going to struggle. And then the leaders that we are to go out and create, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We miss opportunity to help others. We miss opportunity in business. We miss opportunity in our marriages, with our kids, with our relationships. I'm a transactional person. I'm a business owner. But if it doesn't come from relationship,
Mm-hmm.
that's not healthy. So I teach and train on that in both the life and the leadership. And then I do inspirational speaking. I share my story from the perspective of forgiveness, from the understanding that when we have forgiveness, not just for others, but also for ourselves, we recognize God's glory and mercy in us and in those around us. And we have better, stronger, healthier relationships on that. And it's just a mindset of kingdom community. That's what God wants. He's created that here on earth. So when we go to heaven, just walk in and know what to do. Now, maybe a little sacrilegious in saying it that way, but he's calling us to be co-heirs with Christ. And that's what Christ taught. And so to be able to reach out to me, to get a hold of me, it's Chris Tice. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram at Tice Inspires. I believe if you just type my name and it's spelled correctly, T with ice is the best way to remember the Tice part. You can find me there, or you can email me, chris@eaglefireenrichment.com. I'd love to connect with you. That way, if you happen to be in the area of somewhere that I'm speaking, such as Project Die Hard, I know we were going to talk a little bit about that.
Talk about dates and all that.
Yeah. So that is the last weekend in July. Friday, Saturday, Sunday is the event. I speak Friday night. And it's going to be a message of hope. We called it, so last year we had Fob Rush, which was named for a veteran who had ended their life. And, Brian has a heart of gold. If you all don't know who Brian Gibson is, I'm not seeing all the live streaming that's out there. If you're watching this later, look up Project Die Hard. Brian is doing everything he can to provide, not just end and bring awareness to veteran suicide and veteran struggles, and first responder as well. He's actually creating somewhere for people to stay, to connect, and to be connected, and to have hope. And so that's what we called it, Hope Stock 2022. I will be speaking on that hope. Our hope and our help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth, and he brings community together for us to do life together, to help one another, to guide one another, to strengthen one another, to end the thoughts that we're not worthy and that we're not good enough. I've been down that road. I've tried it. And God kept me here for a reason and a purpose, and he did the same for you. He did the same for all of you, everyone that's watching this. And so that's what Hope Stock 2022 is all about. It's that last weekend in July. I encourage you, if you're going to be in Illinois, look us up, come see us, but we will be live streaming it. So if you do connect with me, or if you're connected with Brian, or however you see this, we will be live streaming it as well. So I'll make sure that however we set up the link, Brian's working on that right now, and my son, because my son's helping out with it. And we'll have all that available for everybody to be able to see and share it. Share the hope, share the love. Whether it's this show, whether it's another show that Richard does, or something else that Richard's a part of, or you see something Brian's doing or I'm doing, or anybody out there that you see hope in, share it, because you never know the impact you're going to put out there. I'm going to finish this part of this with this is the 3 great eyes of leadership. We are here to positively influence so we can have massive impact, so we can all live healthier, inspired lives.
I love it. So that brings me to my last question. I recently had one of the Iron Chefs on from the Food Network, Simon Majumdar, and he was telling me that, we've lost over 100,000 restaurants since COVID started. So we got a lot of people out there that are unemployed or driving for Uber, driving for DoorDash, living crazy lives. So the average, if you ask the average American to do something in 7 days, they're pretty much never going to get to it. But if you ask somebody that's listening to our show right now to take an actionable step in the next 24 hours, they're more likely to do it. So if somebody's listening to our episode right now and they're struggling with their faith. Now, they say that if you don't feel close to God, God never moves. You're the one that moved. So if somebody's here struggling with their faith, what can they do in the next 24 hours to find some peace and get some clarity in their life and get close to him again?
Use the ask method. ASK, ask, seek, knock. For I stand at the door and it's open. I'm already ready to answer. I just forgot the name of it's a country song. I forgot who sings it. It says, don't let your praying knees get lazy. You've got to pray, 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 and be specific. There's a book out there called Dangerous Prayers. I believe Craig Groeschel wrote it. If I got that wrong, to whoever did write it, sorry. But it's Dangerous Prayers. And it's just being intentional with your prayer life and saying, God, this is what I'm struggling with. Because he already knows. He knows. He's just saying, come to me. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Because I love you. I love you this much. I love you so much. I gave you my one and only son to save you. Now, what did Jesus say? For in this world you will have trouble, but fear not, for I have overcome the world. So start praying and reach out to someone who has just gotten a smile out of you. Someone who gives you hope or you see hope in. That's why I was saying earlier, if it's me, reach out there a DM, we'll set something up. If it's Richard, reach out. If it's just, anybody that can be, what do they call it? Buddy check. I could be that buddy check for you. Reach out and just say, hey, I'm struggling. But you've got to get going with God and just tell him. Doesn't mean you're going to have it all right and all figured out. I don't, folks. I'm not perfect. I hit my knees. Literally sometimes. You got to pray right now, right in this moment. Just start saying, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And I'm not asking for some 24-hour, I'm not going to eat anything, have anything to drink, fasting. I pray and I'm speaking in tongues, kind of moment. Just right in any moment, just say, okay, God, what do you want me to do? You got to listen. And sometimes you get the audible voice like I did. Sometimes you see a parrot. I can't control that for you. I don't know what God's going to do. For the Lord works in mysterious ways, but we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. We are made in his love, and we are to share that with one another. So if you're not, we're all struggling, but if you're not in kind of that muck and mire like what I was in, and I know so many others are, and again, my heart goes out to you, then be that person that's reaching out. Pray, hey God, show me someone that I could reach out to right now, that I could text, I could call them, I could FaceTime, I could Zoom them, I could go to their house, I could send them a letter, a card. I'm thinking of you. Take an action step to help someone else. Do those things. Take action, though. Once you have prayed, start taking action on the things God has called you to do. Find those things that make you smile, but make sure they're positive. I don't want negative influences. At one point in time, grabbing a bottle of beer made me smile. That was not healthy. I want healthy choices. That's why the last I is to live an inspired, healthy life. Take action on it.
Love it, guys. So definitely check out Hope Stock. I know I'm going to be there virtually. I can't wait. We're one of the sponsors of the show, so we're going to be promoting it out. Talk to Brian Gibson. If you guys don't know Brian, he's everywhere. Just look up or Project Die Hard. Guys, pick up my book, A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light. It's my story. At the end of each chapter, it gives my perspective on what not to do in life. And the last two chapters are what does depression look like? Not what you think it is. What is addiction and not what you think it is? So it's actually a workbook. And all the proceeds go to help Brian save lives. So check that out. And I want to thank Tammy Moses, the Hoarding Solution. She's doing amazing things, changing the world one home at a time. Check them out. So, and guys, make sure you check out Mr. Chris Tice on Instagram. Make sure. See, he's like the white rapper Tice.
Yeah, I've gotten a few of those.
So, Chris, I just want to say, brother, I'm honored to call you friend.
Oh, me as well. Richard, again, I said at the start of the show, to everybody watching, I'm so grateful. Time is a huge resource for us all. And for you to take this time to not just hear me, to hear Richard and anyone other guests that he's had on. If you haven't seen them, I'll go back and check them out. I know I am. I'm working on catching up. I've got obviously a few because he's done more than 400. So, but seek that out. Ask, seek, knock. Seek it out. The knocking is the action. Take action on it. And I say this at the end of all my videos, and I truly mean it because I know how blessed I am. And Richard, again, so grateful you brought me on. So grateful for everybody who took their time out today or watching the replay. But this is what I really want everybody to do is go out and make every day great. Remember, can't never did. Never forget, God blesses us all.
I love it. Guys, remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but up. All right, guys, I'll catch you tomorrow.